AITA for refusing to let my friend move in after she repeatedly ignored my boundaries during a previous stay. I, 34F, have a close friend, Melissa, 33F, who has been going through a rough time recently. She lost her job and, subsequently, her apartment, and she reached out asking if she could move in with me temporarily until she got back on her feet. I've always cared about her and wanted to help, but I hesitated because of the last time she stayed with me, which did not go well. About 3 years ago, Melissa stayed with me for about 3 weeks while she was in between jobs. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment, and at that time, I made very clear rules for her stay. She needed to respect my space, follow my routines, contribute to groceries if her stay extended, and not have friends over without asking. I was upfront that I had work obligations and that my apartment needed to remain orderly for both of us. The first few days went fine, but soon problems started to arise. She left dishes in the sink for days, left clothes and personal items scattered throughout the apartment, and frequently took liberties with my personal belongings without asking. I reminded her politely several times, but she would apologize briefly and then continue the same behavior. It was frustrating because I had explicitly communicated boundaries, but she seemed to feel that my home was hers to use as she wished. The situation escalated when she began inviting friends over without permission. One evening, she invited 3 of her coworkers to my living room to hang out and watch TV. They were loud, used my kitchen supplies, and left trash behind. When I asked her to clean up, she became defensive, saying I was too uptight and spoiling her fun. I tried compromising by setting specific times for guests, but she disregarded these arrangements and continued having people over at her convenience. By the end of her stay, my apartment was messy, and I was exhausted. Melissa had also left a few minor damages, including a broken lamp and stains on the carpet, which required time and money to fix. When she finally moved out, I told her that I could not host her again for an extended stay without firm boundaries in place, and I made it clear that temporary visits would be fine, but not long-term residency. She seemed disappointed, but agreed at the time. Fast forward to last month, Melissa contacted me again, asking to move in temporarily until she got a new job and apartment. I immediately said no, explaining that based on her previous behavior, I could not trust that she would respect my home or boundaries. I offered alternatives, such as helping her find temporary housing, assisting with job applications, or storing some of her essential items while she arranged a new apartment. Melissa did not take this well. She accused me of being selfish, uncaring, and prioritizing my comfort over our friendship. She insisted that staying with me was her only viable option and implied that I was turning my back on her during a difficult time. I reiterated that my refusal was not about not wanting to help her, but about maintaining boundaries to protect both her well-being and mine. I emphasized that helping her find housing or resources would be more effective than letting her stay with me again. Since then, our relationship has been tense. Melissa has been passive-aggressive and distant, occasionally bringing up my refusal to mutual friends to imply I am unsupportive. Some friends suggest I should just let her stay to avoid conflict, while others agree that my boundaries are reasonable given the previous experience. I feel guilty because I care about her and want to help, but I also recognize that hosting her again could lead to the same chaos and stress as before. AITA for refusing to let my friend move in after she repeatedly ignored my boundaries during her previous stay. I've tried to offer practical ways to help her without compromising my home or mental health, but she insists that staying with me is the only solution. I want to maintain our friendship and support her in reasonable ways, but I also need to enforce boundaries that protect my space and well-being. Has anyone else dealt with a friend repeatedly asking to live with them despite causing problems previously? How did you say no firmly without permanently damaging the relationship? I want to support Melissa in ways that are sustainable and safe for both of us, but I cannot allow history to repeat itself. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious. When do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my younger brother's new girlfriend move in with us, even though my parents are pressuring me to say yes. I, 27F, live with my parents in a large suburban house. It's the house I grew up in, and even though I've been independent in other aspects of my life, I've always stayed here for financial reasons. My younger brother, Jake, 23M, has always been a bit impulsive and reckless. Over the last year, he's been dating a woman named Monica, 22F, and from the start, I had a weird feeling about her. She's charming on the surface, but something about her just didn't sit right with me. My parents, however, adore her. They say she's sweet, funny, and that she fits right in with the family. About 3 months ago, Monica mentioned in passing that she was looking for a place to stay. She claimed her roommate situation was unbearable and hinted that she might need a new place very soon. I didn't think much of it at the time. A week later, my parents called me into the living room and dropped the bomb. They want Monica to move in with us. According to them, it's temporary, maybe a month or two, until she finds a place of her own. They try to frame it as helping family, being welcoming, and building stronger bonds, but I was immediately uncomfortable. I said so, but they brushed it off, insisting I was overreacting. My main issue is that I value my personal space and privacy. I work from home, and having someone else in the house would make it incredibly difficult for me to focus. Monica has a reputation for being very clingy and for expecting everyone to revolve around her. I've seen her manipulate situations to get what she wants. For example, during a family game night, she started an argument with my mom over something trivial and then somehow convinced Jake to apologize to her, even though she was clearly in the wrong. I just know that living with her will be exhausting and stressful. I tried to explain this to my parents, but they just said I was being judgmental and mean-spirited for not trusting my brother's judgment. They even implied that if I was a good sister, I would just accommodate her for a short time. I told them very clearly that I would not be comfortable having Monica move in, even temporarily. I suggested alternative options, like helping her find a short-term rental, offering to help her look for an apartment, or even giving her a list of local extended-stay hotels. My parents dismissed all of these suggestions and kept pressing me, saying it would teach me to be a team player and that I should think of the family. I explained that my boundaries are important and that I don't want to be in a situation that would create resentment or conflict in the household. They accused me of being selfish and said I was turning this into a battle over nothing. Jake, surprisingly, sided with me initially. He said he understood my perspective, that his work schedule is similar to mine, and that having Monica move in could cause tension. But after a few days of being pressured by my parents, he wavered. He told me he really likes Monica, that she's been through some rough patches, and that it would mean a lot to her if I could just make this small sacrifice. I told him that I understand that, but my mental health and well-being are not small sacrifices to be bargained over. I tried to appeal to his sense of compromise, suggesting that maybe he could help her for a weekend or two, but living in the house full-time is a different story. The situation escalated when my parents began having private conversations with Monica without me. I found out that they had been talking about planning the move in, and even hinted that they would try to convince me later by framing it as a surprise. When I confronted them, they acted like I was overreacting and that I was being paranoid. They said, "We just want to help Monica. It's not like we're forcing you." I responded that even if it's not forcing me, it still puts me in a position where I have to say yes or risk upsetting the entire family. I also pointed out that there are legal and logistical implications of having a non-family member move in, including lease agreements, insurance, and house rules, which I feel my responsibility too. They dismissed these concerns, saying I was complicating things unnecessarily. Monica herself started reaching out to me directly, saying things like, "I hope we can be roommates. I promise I won't be a burden." She tried to charm me, and honestly, she was friendly at first. But then she started subtly guilt-tripping me, mentioning how hard it is to find a place these days and how much she just wants to feel welcome with the family. I made it clear multiple times that I was not comfortable with her moving in, but she seemed to take it as a temporary obstacle rather than a boundary. I tried to establish firm rules. No moving in, no expectation of me changing my mind, and no behind-the-scenes maneuvering. My parents reacted poorly, claiming I was turning this into a drama and overreacting. Jake ended up telling me he felt caught in the middle, and that he didn't want to disappoint Monica or upset our parents. I told him I didn't want him to feel guilty, but that he needed to understand my perspective too. I also mentioned that if he really cared about Monica, he should help her find a solution that doesn't involve violating my boundaries. Last week, things came to a head. My parents scheduled a family meeting to discuss the move-in. Monica was invited. They started presenting it as a fait accompli, saying that I just needed to adjust and that it would only be for a little while. I calmly reiterated my stance. I'm not okay with her living here, period. My parents argued that I was selfish and that I was making life harder for everyone. Monica looked hurt and tried to sweet-talk me, but I stayed firm. The meeting ended with a lot of tension, and my parents are now giving me the silent treatment, while Jake is frustrated and keeps texting me, saying that he feels I'm overreacting and breaking up the family harmony. I know my stance is causing a rift in the family, and I hate it. I don't want to be seen as the villain, but I also feel that my home, my space, and my mental health are non-negotiable. I've considered compromises, but they all feel like I'm bending over backward to accommodate someone I don't trust and whom my instincts tell me would create unnecessary stress. My parents, on the other hand, are convinced that I am being unreasonable and that a good sister would make this temporary adjustment. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother's girlfriend move in with us. Even though my parents are pressuring me to say yes, I feel like my boundaries are being ignored, but at the same time, I can see why they might think it's a minor issue that I should just get over. I'm stuck in this stalemate, and the tension is starting to affect everyone in the household. I just want to do what's right without sacrificing my own well-being. Has anyone else dealt with a situation where family boundaries clashed with family loyalty? How do you navigate that without turning into the villain in your own home? AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she insulted me in front of the whole family? I, 32F, come from a fairly tight-knit family. I have one younger sister, Emily, 28F, and we've always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, our parents often compared us, and Emily has always been sensitive about money and appearances. I've worked hard for the life I have now. I'm financially stable, own my home, and I try to save whenever I can. Emily, on the other hand, has always struggled with money and has leaned on me more than once for support. Recently, Emily got engaged to her boyfriend, Tom, 30M. When she announced the engagement, everyone was excited, and I genuinely wanted to be supportive. Early on, she asked me if I could contribute financially to the wedding, which is apparently going to be huge and expensive. The number she mentioned was significant, about $5,000. She framed it as it would mean so much to have me help with this once-in-a-lifetime day. I was taken aback because, while I've helped her before with smaller things, this is a huge sum, and I felt uncomfortable being essentially coerced into funding a major portion of her wedding. I explained that I'm willing to help in other ways, planning, decorations, or even helping with DIY projects, but I couldn't give that much money. Initially, she seemed okay with it, but things started escalating as the wedding planning continued. Emily is very social media savvy and has been obsessed with having a perfect Instagram wedding. Every time she talked about her wedding plans, there was an undertone that implied I wasn't doing enough or wasn't wealthy enough to contribute in the way she expected. Things came to a head last weekend. The family had a small pre-wedding brunch, and I was there to help with setting up. I had spent hours making flower arrangements, setting up tables, and helping coordinate the catering. I was proud of the work I did. Halfway through the brunch, Emily started ranting in front of everyone about how some people just don't understand the sacrifices needed to make a wedding perfect, and specifically said, I don't know how some people expect to be part of this without actually investing anything. Some of us work hard to make things beautiful, and some people just don't. Everyone knew she was talking about me. I was stunned. I tried to brush it off at first, but when she continued, I confronted her. I said, if you wanted money from me, You should have asked directly instead of publicly shaming me. I contributed in ways that don't involve writing a check, and I'm proud of that." She laughed in a very condescending way and said, "Well, I guess some people don't have the means or the heart to actually help. That's okay. You could just sit back and enjoy the brunch." At this point, I was furious. Not only had she belittled me in front of my parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and her friends, but she also completely dismissed all the work I had put in to help her. I left the brunch and haven't spoken to her since. After that, she called me and begged me to just reconsider helping financially, saying things like, "It's your sister. Don't let this ruin our relationship. We could really use your support." I responded by saying I would not be giving her money and that I wouldn't tolerate being shamed for it. She hung up on me. Now, the family is split. Some people are saying I'm being harsh and that I should help my sister because of the big day in her life and that I'm being selfish by not giving money. Others, including some cousins and friends, are saying Emily is being manipulative and that no one should shame a sibling publicly to coerce financial support. I feel like I've tried to be supportive in many ways, but being insulted in front of everyone crossed a line. I've offered time, effort, and creativity, but apparently that doesn't count because it's not monetary. I'm also frustrated because I feel like Emily has always expected me to help her financially without considering my boundaries. I don't want to be seen as the bad sister, but I also can't ignore the fact that her actions were hurtful and controlling. I'm now worried that refusing to pay for the wedding might permanently damage my relationship with her. Part of me wonders if I overreacted by walking out of the brunch and not responding to her calls. At the same time, I feel justified in protecting my boundaries and refusing to be shamed. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she insulted me in front of everyone. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancé stay at my house after what happened last Thanksgiving. I, 32F, live in a medium-sized city, and I've been renting my own apartment for about 6 years now. My younger brother, Ethan, 29M, has always been more free-spirited and sometimes irresponsible, especially with finances. Over the years, I've tried to help him whenever I could, but I've always drawn the line at my personal space. That line got tested last Thanksgiving, and I'm still not sure if I overreacted or if I did the right thing. Ethan has been dating his fiancée, Lila, 27F, for almost 2 years. I met her briefly at family events, and I thought she was polite enough, although I didn't really get to know her that well. They've been planning their wedding for next summer, and naturally, the topic of holidays came up. Ethan called me a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving, asking if Lila could stay at my apartment for a few days because they didn't have a place booked yet. I was a little taken aback because I live in a one-bedroom apartment and I don't really have extra space. I mentioned that to him and suggested a nearby Airbnb that was reasonably priced. He said it was too expensive and insisted that it would just be a few nights. I hesitated, but didn't say no outright. The week before Thanksgiving, Ethan called again, this time sounding a little desperate. He said Lila had recently moved into his parents' house temporarily because her apartment lease ended, and they didn't want to deal with her parents' complicated household during the holiday. He insisted it would be fine, that they'd bring an air mattress, and he tried to assure me that they'd be totally respectful. At that point, I told him I wasn't comfortable having them stay in my small apartment and that I'd love to meet up for dinner instead, or we could do a family gathering at my parents' place. He seemed disappointed, but agreed to think about other arrangements. Thanksgiving week, Ethan called again, and I could tell he was frustrated. He said all the hotels were booked in our city and that Lila really wanted to stay with me. I explained again that I didn't have the space and wasn't comfortable hosting them, and I offered to help them find a nearby Airbnb or another hotel. He became a bit defensive and accused me of being selfish and uncaring. I stayed firm, but started feeling guilty because it was a family holiday and I didn't want to cause tension. The day before Thanksgiving, Ethan sent a message saying they had no place to stay and that they were going to come over anyway, even if I wasn't happy about it. At that moment, I felt my patience snap. I told him firmly that if they showed up at my apartment, I would not let them in. I also explained that my home is my personal space and I can't accommodate extra guests I haven't agreed to, especially for multiple nights. Ethan didn't respond immediately, but later he texted that he couldn't believe I would turn them away and that our family was going to see me as the mean sibling. Thanksgiving Day came, and thankfully they didn't come to my apartment, but I did get a few heated texts from Ethan. He was calling me selfish again and implied that my refusal would create a rift in the family. I tried to stay calm and reiterated that I was happy to meet for dinner or help them find accommodation, but I couldn't host them. Lila also sent a text that was polite but a little passive-aggressive, thanking me for considering letting them stay. I didn't respond. After the holiday, Ethan's parents called me. They were surprised at the tension and asked why I didn't just let them stay. I explained my side and mentioned that I have a one-bedroom apartment and value my privacy. My parents seemed to understand but said I should try to be more flexible for family gatherings. Ethan has been giving me the cold shoulder ever since, and Lila posts subtle things on social media, implying that I'm difficult and mean. I feel like I set a reasonable boundary, but my brother and his fiancée keep framing me as the villain. I have since invited them to a post-Thanksgiving brunch at my parents' house, hoping to smooth things over. Ethan agreed to come, but said he still feels I was unnecessarily harsh by refusing to let them stay at my place. I can't help but feel that allowing them to stay would have compromised my personal comfort and created a stressful environment for me. I want to support my family, but I also believe it's important to maintain boundaries, especially when my living space is limited. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée stay at my apartment last Thanksgiving. Even though they didn't have another place to go, I'm trying to figure out if I was being selfish or if it's reasonable to say no when it involves my personal space, especially for an extended stay during a major holiday. The tension is still lingering, and I feel stuck between keeping my boundaries and keeping peace in the family. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house before the wedding. I, 32F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emily, 28F. We grew up in the same house and shared everything. So when she got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 30M, I was genuinely excited for her. Emily and I have always had a pretty honest relationship, so I felt comfortable being upfront about my boundaries. The issue started a few months ago when Emily and Mark began discussing their wedding plans. Emily and Mark live about 3 hours away from me. Since I am the older sister and have more space, Emily asked if Mark could stay at my apartment for a couple of nights before the wedding because they had a lot of errands to run in my city and wanted to avoid the hotel costs. I was taken aback because my apartment is small. I live alone in a one-bedroom, and I don't have a guest room. I told Emily that I didn't think it would be comfortable for me or for Mark to stay there. I suggested she could book a hotel nearby, or perhaps stay with a friend who had more space. Emily's response was that it was just for 2 nights, and that Mark would be really respectful. She also added that it would save them money, which she assumed I wouldn't mind. I tried to explain that it wasn't about money. It was about having my own space. My apartment is my sanctuary, and I work from home. Having someone else in my space, even for a couple of nights, would disrupt my routine. Emily got upset and said I was being selfish and overly dramatic, and that I should support her during such an important time. I stuck to my decision and reiterated that my boundaries didn't make me a bad sister. I just needed my home to remain my own. Emily eventually dropped the subject for a while, but things got tense at family gatherings. Our parents tried to mediate, saying that I could at least let him crash on the couch. I refused again, explaining that the couch is in my living room where I also have my workspace, and I can't function properly with someone else sleeping there. My parents said I was being rigid and that I should consider Emily's happiness over minor inconveniences. Fast forward to a month before the wedding, Emily called me crying because Mark was having trouble finding affordable accommodation, and the hotels near me were fully booked because of conference. She begged me again to let him stay for 1 night at least. I considered it, but after thinking about it, I realized I would feel stressed and anxious the entire time he was there. I explained this to Emily, trying to be as gentle as possible, but she accused me of ruining her plans and said she couldn't believe I would refuse her fiancé. The night she called, I ended up talking to Mark directly. I wanted him to understand that it wasn't personal. I just wasn't comfortable hosting anyone. Mark seemed taken aback and said he could try a friend's place or another hotel. Emily was furious when she found out I'd talked to him without her permission and called me controlling. Things escalated during the final week before the wedding. Emily and Mark's initial hotel plans fell through again due to last-minute cancellations, and Emily reached out to me with what felt like an ultimatum. If you don't let him stay here, I don't know if we can have the same relationship we've always had. I felt cornered, but I didn't give in. I told her I loved her, I supported her wedding, and I wanted everything to go smoothly, but my home was my boundary, and that had to be respected. The day before the wedding, Emily arrived in town with Mark. They stayed at a nearby hotel, as I suggested, and I could tell there was tension. Emily didn't speak to me much, and Mark seemed apologetic but awkward around me. At the wedding, Emily was cordial but distant. Some relatives commented that there was sister drama, and I was frustrated because all I wanted was to maintain my personal space without being labeled the villain. After the wedding, Emily texted me that she was disappointed in me and that she felt I didn't really care about family. She implied that my refusal to host Mark showed a lack of support. I tried to respond calmly, explaining that love and support don't have to mean compromising personal boundaries, but she hasn't fully forgiven me. Our parents seem to think I overreacted and that I should have put my sister first. I still feel like I did the right thing. I don't think someone should be forced to host a guest, even if it's family, if it will make them uncomfortable or disrupt their personal life. I tried to offer alternatives and was upfront from the start. However, the fallout has been stressful, and I'm starting to wonder if I'm truly in the wrong. I love my sister and her fiancé, but I also need to maintain my home and mental well-being. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my small apartment before the wedding, despite their repeated requests and the resulting tension. AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after what happened to my own. I, 32F, have always had a complicated relationship with my family, but I thought we were mostly past the usual sibling rivalry and family drama. My brother, David, 35M, is a few years older than me, and growing up, he was the golden child. He got all the praise, the attention, and in many ways, my parents leaned heavily on him as the standard of how things should be done. I was the quieter, more reserved sibling, and I've always felt a little overshadowed. Fast forward to 4 years ago, I got engaged to my fiancé, Tom, 34M. We've been together for 7 years, and we were excited to finally get married. From the start, I wanted a small, intimate wedding. My vision was simple: a ceremony at a local botanical garden with close family and friends, followed by a casual reception. I was very clear with my parents and David about my plans. I wasn't trying to exclude anyone. I just wanted something manageable and meaningful to us. My family, especially my mother, seemed fine with the idea until David got involved. He started sending me links to extravagant venues, suggesting I needed a bigger wedding, a better dress, a live band, essentially turning my simple plans into a full-scale production. I politely declined, saying I appreciated the suggestions, but I wanted the wedding to reflect Tom and me, not a Pinterest fantasy. The problem started escalating about 6 months before the wedding. David decided it would be a good idea to help with the guest list. He added dozens of his friends, some of whom I had met once or never, without consulting me. When I brought it up, he insisted that he was just trying to be helpful and that my wedding should be more social. I told him firmly that the guest list was our decision, and I expected him to respect that. My parents sided with him to some extent, saying I should be more flexible, which frustrated me. Then came a dress fiasco. I found a simple, elegant gown that I loved and told my mom and David. They both went quiet for a moment, and then David remarked, "Are you sure that's the one? It's simple. Don't you want something that will wow everyone?" I told him yes, I was sure. But over the next few weeks, my mom started dropping hints about upgrading the dress, and David took it upon himself to make appointments with different bridal shops. I ended up spending hours trying on dresses I didn't want while he and my mom criticized every choice. It became clear that they were determined to make my wedding a reflection of what they thought was impressive, not what I wanted. The last straw was the day of my rehearsal dinner. I had planned a small gathering at a local restaurant with immediate family and our bridal party. David showed up with a group of his friends, nearly doubling the number of attendees, and he started loudly critiquing the table setup the food, and even my seating arrangement. He made a big scene about how I should listen to my family more. I was mortified. My fiancé tried to calm things down, but David would not stop, and my parents didn't step in. That night, I felt completely undermined and humiliated. On the wedding day, I tried to stay calm. I walked down the aisle, exchanged vows with Tom, and did my best to enjoy the day. But David spent the ceremony whispering complaints to my parents, taking over the photo arrangements, and even critiquing the officiant. By the time the reception started, I was barely holding it together. I ended up having a private moment with Tom, telling him that I felt like I didn't even get the wedding I wanted. It was supposed to be about us, but it felt like a showcase for everyone else. After the wedding, I made the conscious decision to limit my contact with David. I didn't cut him out completely, but I stopped inviting him to personal events and reduced our interactions. I thought things would calm down over time. Fast forward to now. David is getting married in 6 months. He's been planning a huge, extravagant wedding at a luxury venue. Invitations have gone out, and it's clear it's going to be a multi-day affair with hundreds of guests. I've received my invite, but I've been dreading it. Knowing how he behaved at my wedding, I can't imagine that he won't try to take over or make the event about himself. I tried bringing it up with my parents, explaining that I feel anxious and uncomfortable about attending. They told me I should go, that it's his big day, and that I'm being selfish. I decided to write a polite note declining the invitation, explaining that while I wish him the best, I won't be attending due to personal reasons. My parents are upset, saying I'm being dramatic and ruining family unity. David hasn't spoken to me since receiving the note, which I kind of expected, honestly. My friends say I'm justified. Why should I subject myself to humiliation again? But part of me feels guilty. I keep imagining the family backlash, the lectures about family obligations, and the inevitable tension at gatherings. I don't want to be the villain, but I also can't face a situation where I know I'll feel belittled and ignored again. I don't want to burn bridges completely, but I also feel like setting boundaries is necessary. I've offered to celebrate with him in a smaller, private way if he wants, but I know that won't satisfy him or my parents. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after the way he treated me at mine. I feel torn between protecting my mental health and maintaining family peace, and I'm worried I'm being judged harshly for standing up for myself. The fear of repeating the same humiliating experience is real, but the guilt from not participating in a major family milestone is also heavy. I want to do the right thing for me without completely alienating my family, but every time I imagine being at his wedding, I feel anxious, stressed, and resentful. Has anyone else had a sibling wedding fallout like this? How do you navigate family expectations while prioritizing your own boundaries? AITA for refusing to lend my car to my sister after she sabotaged my plans? I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family, the one everyone leans on when they need help. I have an older sister, Rachel, 35F, who has always had a knack for getting what she wants, sometimes by bending the truth or taking advantage of people's kindness. Our relationship has always been a bit strained because of this, but I usually try to keep the peace. Recently, however, something happened that has made me seriously reconsider how much I'm willing to help her. A few months ago, I bought my first car outright. It's not a luxury vehicle by any means, but it's reliable and I love it. I worked hard to save for it, and it felt like a real milestone for me. The car also became crucial for my day-to-day life because I recently started a new job that requires me to commute 45 minutes each way. Before this, I didn't need a car and relied on public transport, but now it's pretty much indispensable. I've been very protective of it because I want it to last and because it represents a lot of my independence. My sister, Rachel, has had her license for years, but she has a reputation for being careless. She's been in a couple of minor accidents and has a history of letting her friends borrow her car only to return it late or with damage. Because of this, I've always been hesitant to let her drive mine. I've mentioned before that I'm willing to help her out in emergencies, but I don't feel comfortable letting her use my car regularly or for non-essential reasons. 2 weeks ago, Rachel called me panicked. Her car had broken down, and she needed a way to get to work. Her workplace is about 20 minutes away from my house, and she asked if she could borrow my car for a few days until hers got fixed. I hesitated but told her I could give her a ride to work a couple of times, but I couldn't lend her my car because I was relying on it for my own commute and personal errands. I also suggested she look into temporary car rental or car sharing services. She seemed frustrated but didn't argue at the time. The next day, I had a meeting scheduled for work that I couldn't miss. I left the house around 7:15 a.m., only to discover that my car was gone. I was confused because I hadn't given her permission to take it, and I didn't see her anywhere. I tried calling her, and she picked up but sounded irritated. She said she needed to take it to get some urgent errands done and that she'd return it by 10 a.m. I reminded her that I wasn't comfortable with her using my car and that this was not okay. She dismissed me and hung up. Naturally, I was furious. I had no other way to get to my meeting, so I ended up calling a taxi, which cost me more than I usually spend on gas for a week. When she returned the car around 11, I noticed that there were scratches on the passenger side door and the bumper had a small dent. I asked her about it, and she shrugged, saying it must have happened while she was parked and insisting it wasn't her fault. I was livid because she had taken my car without my consent and now it was damaged. I told her that this was completely unacceptable and that I could no longer trust her with my belongings. Rachel got defensive and accused me of being overly controlling and selfish. She argued that she had no other options and that as her sister, I should have helped her. I reminded her that I had offered alternative solutions, including rides, but that she chose to take my car anyway. The conversation ended with her storming off, muttering that I was impossible. Since then, she's been posting passive-aggressive messages on social media about how family members never help each other when it matters most, and hinting that I'm cold-hearted. Several mutual friends have messaged me privately asking if I'm really refusing to help her, and I've tried to explain the situation, but opinions are mixed. Some say I should have let her take the car, considering her situation, while others agree that taking someone's property without permission and causing damage is completely unacceptable. The tension between us has escalated. My parents are involved now, with my mom suggesting that I should be more generous, and that Rachel was just stressed and didn't think. My dad is more neutral, but cautioned me about family drama. I feel like I'm being painted as the villain for setting boundaries, while Rachel seems to be getting sympathy for breaking them. I've considered offering to help cover the repair costs for the scratches and dent, but I don't want to reward her behavior or give her the impression that she can take my things whenever she feels like it. This has also made me wary of lending things to other family members. I've always tried to be the nice sibling, but I'm starting to realize that being nice doesn't mean allowing people to disrespect my boundaries. I'm not sure if I overreacted or if I was right to stand my ground. I still want a relationship with my sister, but I also don't want to be the one constantly accommodating her, especially when she shows such disregard for my property and plans. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister use my car after she took it without permission and caused damage. I feel justified in my actions, but I can't shake the feeling that some people might see me as unsympathetic. I've tried to balance compassion with practicality, but it seems like family expectations are clouding everyone's judgment. I'm hoping to get an honest perspective on whether I was in the wrong or if I'm right to protect my property and set firm boundaries. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she insulted my parenting. So, this is going to be a long one, but I need some outside perspective because my family has completely turned on me. I, 34F, have a 6-year-old daughter, Emma, and I have always tried to do my best as a parent, even if I don't always follow what other people think is ideal. My younger sister, Laura, 31F, has always been the more high-strung, controlling type. She has a fiancé, Jason, 33M, who is very laid-back, but he tends to just go along with whatever Laura says, so it's basically a package deal. Laura got engaged last year, and from the beginning, she has been extremely intense about planning everything for the wedding. I was happy for her, but it quickly became clear that she expected everyone to bend over backwards to fit her vision. She specifically asked me to help with decorations, which I was happy to do. I thought it would be fun and a way to spend time together. Fast forward to a couple of months ago, Laura starts making passive-aggressive comments about how chaotic my house is when Emma is around. At first, I try to brush it off, assuming it was stress from wedding planning. But then, she started to make direct comments to me like, you really shouldn't let Emma eat sugar before bed if you want her to behave, or you let her watch way too much TV, don't you? She knows I have a single-parent lifestyle and a busy job, so she kind of just assumed she could lecture me about my parenting choices. I tried to politely explain my reasoning, but she kept interrupting me and saying things like, well, maybe if you actually had your life together, you could manage better. Things escalated at a family dinner last month. Laura invited me, Emma, our parents, and some extended family. Emma was excited because she had been learning a new dance routine at school. She started dancing in a living room to show us, and Laura immediately scoffed and said loudly, "Stop embarrassing yourself, Emma. You need proper discipline, not just chaos." I felt my face flush and wanted to defend Emma, but my parents didn't say anything, and the rest of the family just awkwardly looked down at their plates. After that dinner, I told Laura privately that I felt her comments were hurtful and unnecessary. I said I wanted to support her wedding, but I needed her to respect me and Emma. She got defensive and said I was overreacting and that she was just giving advice because she cared. I tried to explain that advice is one thing, but publicly humiliating my child is completely different. She didn't budge, and our conversation ended with her saying, "I guess if you don't like my approach, maybe you shouldn't come." At first, I thought she was joking, but over the next few weeks, the wedding planning communications from her became increasingly hostile. She sent me emails criticizing the little tasks I was helping with, saying I was lazy and that I didn't care enough about the wedding success. She even CC'd Jason and my parents in some of these emails. I replied politely, asking for constructive feedback instead of insults, but she doubled down. The breaking point came last week when she called me to discuss seating arrangements. I suggested that Emma sit with me and a few other kids who were friends from her school so she wouldn't get bored. Laura laughed and said, "You know, if you raised her better, she wouldn't be a problem, and maybe she could sit with the adults and behave like a real child." She then added, "Honestly, you should consider not bringing her. It might be better for everyone." I lost it. I told her I would not be attending the wedding if she continued to insult me and Emma. She screamed at me over the phone, calling me a horrible sister and an unfit mother. She hung up, and I blocked her number for a day because I couldn't deal with the stress. When I told our parents and extended family that I would not be going to the wedding under these circumstances, I was expecting some support. Instead, everyone turned on me. My parents said I was being dramatic and overly sensitive, and that I was punishing Laura for no reason. Extended family members accused me of holding grudges and ruining what should be a happy time. A few of them said that I should just swallow my pride and go because it's Laura's day. I've since tried to reach out one more time, explaining calmly that I want to celebrate with her, but only if she respects Emma and me. No response. Meanwhile, wedding day is approaching, and I'm being portrayed as the villain in the family narrative. I feel that attending would be a huge compromise of my values and boundaries, but now I'm second-guessing myself because everyone is pressuring me. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she repeatedly insulted me and my parenting in front of family and friends? I honestly feel like protecting my child and my dignity should come first, but the family is making me feel guilty and like I'm overreacting. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house, even though she claims I'm being unreasonable. I, 32F, have always been the organized one in my family. I live alone in a small but cozy apartment in the city where I work as a freelance graphic designer. My sister, Emily, 29F, has always been a little chaotic. She's sweet, but she tends to make impulsive decisions and has a hard time respecting other people's boundaries. Emily recently got engaged to a man named Mark, 34M. I'll admit that I didn't know him well at first, but over time I've realized he has some qualities that worry me. He can be controlling, and Emily sometimes seems anxious around him. I want to support her, but I also have my own boundaries and space, which are important to me, especially as someone who works from home and values a quiet environment. The problem started last month. Emily and Mark had a disagreement, and she called me, visibly upset, saying she needed a place to stay for a few days while they figured things out. I asked her to clarify what she meant, and she said she wanted to stay at my apartment until things cooled down. I hesitated because I knew Mark would probably come with her, and my apartment isn't big enough for 2 extra people to stay comfortably. I also have a very strict routine, and the idea of hosting a couple of adults for an indefinite period would disrupt my work and mental health. I told Emily that I didn't feel comfortable having them stay in my apartment. I explained that I love her and want to support her, but I can't provide space for her and Mark because of the size of my apartment, my work-from-home schedule, and my need for personal boundaries. She started crying over the phone and accused me of being selfish, saying that family should be there for each other and that I was choosing comfort over love. I tried to reason with her, but she was very emotional and said she'd find somewhere else to stay, though she added, "But I really hoped my own sister would be there for me." A week later, Emily called again, saying she had decided to come over anyway, and that Mark would be staying too. I reiterated that I couldn't accommodate both of them, and that I wouldn't feel comfortable with it. She argued that it was only temporary, and that I could make room. She also tried to guilt me by saying that I had stayed at her place countless times in the past, and that I should reciprocate. At this point, I got a bit firm. I told her, calmly but clearly, that my apartment is my sanctuary and that I cannot compromise my personal space, work environment, or mental health, even for her. I suggested she look into nearby hotels or Airbnb options, or even stay with one of her friends and offer to help her find a suitable place. She accused me of being cruel and said I didn't love her, which hurt because I do love her, but I also believe that love doesn't mean abandoning your own boundaries. The tension escalated when our parents got involved. Emily called them, crying, and told them I refused to help her in a time of need. They called me, asking why I wouldn't let her stay, framing it as a moral obligation to help family. I explained my reasons again: small apartment, work-from-home setup, mental health, and the fact that I would be uncomfortable hosting both her and Mark for an undefined period. They pressed me, asking why I was being so rigid, and if I could make just a small exception. I remained firm, saying that I am happy to support her in other ways, providing rides, helping her find accommodation, offering meals, but I cannot host them in my apartment. After that, Emily and Mark ended up staying at a friend's place temporarily. Emily has since been giving me the silent treatment, and our parents occasionally make comments like, "Maybe you could reconsider for family," or "It's just a few days. What's the harm?" It's causing me stress because I feel like my boundaries are being dismissed, and I also feel guilty because Emily seems hurt. I genuinely tried to offer alternatives and support without compromising my own well-being. I also feel that if I give in now, it might set a precedent that I am okay with sacrificing my boundaries whenever she feels distressed. I want to be there for my sister, but I also want to preserve my mental health, independence, and personal space. Some friends have said I'm right to maintain my boundaries, while others think I could have at least allowed Emily to stay for a couple of nights, especially without Mark. Emily's fiancé, Mark, has made comments to me indirectly through her, implying that I'm not a real sister for not opening my home. I've tried to explain to Emily that my refusal is not about rejecting her as a sister, but rather about the practical limitations of my space and the importance of mental health. She doesn't seem to understand, and our relationship feels strained. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister and her fiancé stay at my apartment, even though she says I'm being unreasonable and selfish for not supporting her in a moment of emotional need. AITA for refusing to let my brother stay with me after he caused major chaos during his last visit. I, 36F, have a younger brother, Kyle, 29M, who I have always cared for, but who has a long history of being irresponsible, especially when it comes to money, time management, and respecting other people's space. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment that I've worked hard to afford. I value my routines, peace, and the way I maintain my home. A couple of years ago, Kyle went through a rough patch. He lost his job, then his apartment, and he asked if he could stay with me temporarily until he got back on his feet. I agreed, but with strict conditions. He could stay for 2 weeks, follow my house rules, not bring friends over without permission, and contribute to groceries if the stay extended. I also told him he needed to respect my schedule because I was working from home at the time. Initially, everything seemed fine. He stayed in the guest room, kept to himself, and appeared grateful. By day 3, things started to go wrong. He left dishes in the sink for days, scattered clothes and personal items all over the living room, and started using my belongings without asking. I reminded him several times, and he would apologize briefly but continue the same behavior. He began staying up late, watching movies at full volume, and leaving trash in shared spaces. Then he started inviting friends over without asking. One evening, he brought over 4 friends to watch a football game. They were loud, drank some of my wine, and left garbage in the kitchen and living room. When I asked him to clean up, he became defensive and said I was too controlling and spoiling his fun. I tried compromising by suggesting times for visitors and loud activities, but he ignored the agreement entirely. By the end of the 2 weeks, my apartment was a mess. Minor damages had occurred, including a broken lamp and stains on the carpet. I was exhausted from constantly cleaning up after him and mediating conflicts with his friends. I told him that he could not stay any longer unless he followed rules strictly and contributed financially. He refused, insisting he couldn't afford it and that I was being selfish. Eventually, I had to tell him he needed to move out immediately. He reacted angrily, accusing me of being cold, uncaring, and prioritizing my comfort over family. He even contacted our parents to complain, claiming I had turned my back on him when he needed support. My parents were upset initially, but they also recognized that he had violated my rules and caused significant stress and damage. Since then, our relationship has been strained. Kyle has been distant and passive-aggressive, occasionally sending messages implying that I abandoned him. Some family members think I should have been more accommodating, while others agree that I was justified in enforcing boundaries. I feel conflicted because I genuinely care about him, but I also need to protect my mental health, financial stability, and personal space. Recently, Kyle reached out again, asking if he could move in temporarily while he gets a new job. I immediately said no, explaining that based on past behavior, I cannot risk hosting him again. He argued, claiming I was unsupportive and that family should always help one another. I reiterated that I am willing to support him in ways that do not compromise my home, such as helping him find housing, assisting with job applications, or providing advice, but I cannot host him full-time. AITA for refusing to let my brother stay with me after he repeatedly ignored my house rules and caused chaos during his previous visit. I feel my boundaries were reasonable, and I tried to compromise and offer alternative support, but he insists that staying with me is the only solution. I want to maintain a relationship with him, but I also need to enforce limits to protect my home, sanity, and well-being. Has anyone else had a family member repeatedly ask to live with them despite past issues? How did you enforce boundaries firmly without permanently damaging the relationship? I want to support Kyle in ways that are safe and sustainable, but I cannot allow history to repeat itself. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé? I never thought I would find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, questioning if I am the unreasonable one. I, 28F, have always been extremely close with my family, especially my older sister, Sarah, 32F. We grew up together, shared everything from clothes to secrets, and even lived together in college. Our bond has always been strong, and until recently, I considered her one of my best friends. That is why this situation has been so heartbreaking and complicated for me. A little background. Sarah met her fiancé, Mark, 34M, about 2 years ago. From the beginning, I had reservations about him, but I tried to keep an open mind. He seemed charming on the surface, funny, confident, and successful, but there were small things that made me uncomfortable. He would interrupt family conversations, dismiss opinions he didn't agree with, and occasionally make passive-aggressive comments, usually thinly veiled as jokes. At first, I brushed it off, thinking I might be overreacting. I've been told before that I can be overly sensitive, so I tried to focus on Sarah's happiness instead. Over time, my discomfort grew. The turning point came during Thanksgiving last year. Mark had made a snide comment about my job, an area I have worked very hard to establish myself in, right in front of my parents and Sarah. He implied that I was wasting my potential because I wasn't in a high-paying corporate job, and while he framed it as concern, it felt more like condescension. Sarah laughed it off, saying he was just joking, but the joke wasn't funny to me. I tried to brush it off, but the humiliation lingered. I left early that night, and for the first time, I felt truly alienated from someone I considered family. Since then, there have been multiple incidents that have made me uncomfortable. Mark has belittled my choices in front of Sarah multiple times, dismissed my experiences, and made unsolicited critiques about my lifestyle. He's also controlling in subtle ways, insisting on knowing our family plans before I can make my own, or making comments about how I dress or behave around his friends. These things accumulate, and while each one might seem minor in isolation, together they create a sense of constant judgment and tension whenever he's around. I've tried talking to Sarah about it, but she brushes it off. She says I am overreacting or that I don't understand his humor, and sometimes she tells me I need to accept that he's part of the family now. I understand her point, but it doesn't make the feeling of being undermined and dismissed any easier to swallow. Now we fast forward to the wedding planning. Sarah invited me early, and initially I was excited. I pictured a beautiful ceremony where we would all celebrate her happiness. But as the wedding date approached, the reality of having to spend hours with Mark became unbearable. My parents and friends encouraged me to put my discomfort aside, saying I should support my sister no matter what. I tried to compromise by attending only the ceremony, but even that made me anxious because I knew Mark would be there and I would likely be subjected to his comments or cold behavior. The final straw came when I overheard Mark talking to one of Sarah's friends about me in a derogatory way. He called me dramatic and petty and suggested that my disagreements with him were unreasonable attempts to control the family dynamic. I was furious, not just at him, but also at the fact that Sarah didn't defend me in that moment. That night, I confronted her, explaining that I could no longer participate in the wedding if he was going to be there, as it felt impossible for me to be in the same room with him without conflict. Sarah was devastated. She accused me of being selfish and of putting her happiness last. She said, "I can't believe you would let Mark ruin my wedding for you." She tried to negotiate, suggesting that I attend only the reception or that I sit away from him, but I couldn't reconcile pretending to be happy while feeling harassed and diminished. I ended up writing her a long message explaining my reasons, emphasizing that my decision was not about disliking her, but about protecting my mental health. I reminded her of all the times I had tried to tolerate Mark's behavior for the sake of family peace. I told her I still loved her and wanted to celebrate her happiness in other ways, like taking her out for a post-wedding brunch or helping with small tasks before the wedding day. I also suggested that I could still send a gift and be supportive from a distance. Sarah hasn't spoken to me in over a week. She has posted about wedding stress on social media, but has not acknowledged my message. Our parents are divided. My mom sympathizes with me, saying that she has noticed Mark's condescending behavior, while my dad insists that I am being dramatic and that family comes first. Friends are split too. Some say I am protecting myself and that it's okay to set boundaries, especially when someone is toxic. Others argue that I am being overbearing and that Sarah deserves my support no matter how difficult Mark is. Even my therapist says that I have every right to set boundaries, but she also asked me to consider whether there's a way to support my sister without exposing myself to harm. I've tried brainstorming options, but anything that involves Mark makes me extremely anxious. At this point, I am stuck. I feel guilty for not attending what should be one of the happiest days of my sister's life. I feel angry that Sarah seems unwilling to acknowledge the issues with Mark or to stand up for me. I feel sad because this is the first major rift in our relationship. I know that my absence will hurt her and maybe even my parents, but I also feel like attending would compromise my mental health and dignity. I keep going over different scenarios in my head, hoping there's a middle ground, but none seem feasible. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé. I love my sister dearly, and I want her to be happy, but I also need to protect myself from someone who has consistently disrespected me. I don't know if I'm being selfish, dramatic, or unreasonable, but the thought of walking down the aisle and pretending everything is fine feels impossible. I am asking for an honest perspective because I feel like I am standing at a crossroads between family loyalty and self-respect, and I don't know which path is right. AITA for refusing to help my sister after she told everyone I owed her my life. I'm 29M and my sister Emma is 33F. Growing up, Emma was always the responsible one. Our parents worked a lot, and she helped raise me. She cooked sometimes, picked me up from school, helped with homework, and generally made sure I didn't do anything too stupid. I'm not denying that she did a lot for me, and I've always appreciated it. The issue is that Emma has always believed that because she helped take care of me when we were kids, I now owe her unlimited loyalty and support as an adult. At first, it showed up in small ways. If she needed help moving, I was expected to drop everything. If she wanted me to drive 3 hours to fix something at her house, it was assumed I would do it. If I hesitated, she would say things like, "I practically raised you." For years, I just went along with it because I felt guilty. She did sacrifice a lot when we were younger. But over time, the requests got bigger and more unreasonable. 3 years ago, Emma and her husband bought a house that was honestly way outside their budget. She asked me to help renovate the basement to turn it into a rental unit. I'm not a professional contractor, but I'm decent with tools and had done some work on my own apartment. What she originally described as a weekend project turned into me spending almost every weekend for 4 months working down there. She never paid me, which I didn't really expect, but she also never really thanked me. Instead, she acted like it was normal. The worst part was that if I said I couldn't come one weekend because I had plans, she'd say things like, "Wow, I guess family doesn't matter to you." After that, I started putting some boundaries in place. I still helped occasionally, but not nearly as much. Emma clearly didn't like that. The real problem started last month. Emma called me saying that her husband had lost his job and they were struggling with a mortgage. She asked if I could temporarily move into the basement unit and pay them rent. That alone wasn't the problem. The problem was the amount. She wanted almost double what similar places rent for in their area. When I asked why it was so high, she said they needed the extra money to stay afloat. I told her I'd think about it, but honestly, I wasn't comfortable paying that much for a basement apartment in a house I helped renovate for free. A few days later, my mom called me asking why I was refusing to help Emma when she needed me. I was confused because I hadn't refused anything yet. Apparently, Emma had already told my parents, our cousins, and even some family friends that I said no and that I was abandoning her after everything she did raising me. She framed it like she had sacrificed her entire childhood for me, and now I wouldn't even help her when she was desperate. I was honestly shocked. I ended up getting several messages from relatives saying things like, "Your sister deserves better," and "Don't forget who took care of you." So I called Emma and asked why she told everyone that. She said she was just explaining the situation and that people were drawing their own conclusions. When I said that wasn't true, she doubled down and started listing all the things she did for me growing up. Then she said something that really bothered me. She said, "You wouldn't even be where you are without me. The least you could do is pay rent for a while." For context, I work hard to get where I am. I paid for most of my own college through scholarships and part-time jobs. I'm not saying Emma didn't help me emotionally when we were kids, but it's not like she funded my life. After that conversation, I decided I wasn't going to move in at all. I told her that since she had already told everyone I refused, she might as well consider it official. That's when she got really angry and said I was proving exactly what she told everyone, that I'm selfish and ungrateful. Now, my parents are involved, and they're basically saying that while Emma shouldn't have talked to everyone first, she is still family, and I should help because she helped raise me. I feel guilty because she really did take care of me when we were kids. At the same time, I feel like she's been holding that over my head for years and using it to justify asking for more and more from me. Some of my friends say she's manipulating me and that family help shouldn't come with a lifelong debt attached. Others say that if my sister is genuinely struggling, I should help even if she handled it badly. So now I'm stuck wondering if I'm being unfair. I could technically afford the rent she asked for. It would just feel like I'm rewarding her for trashing me to the entire family. AITA for refusing to help her after she told everyone I owed her my life. AITA for refusing to give my sister the family heirloom engagement ring, even though she says I don't deserve it. I, 28F, got engaged to my fiancé Daniel, 30M, about 2 months ago. When he proposed, he used a ring that originally belonged to my grandmother. It's a simple gold ring with a small diamond. Nothing flashy, but it means a lot to me because my grandma practically raised me while my parents worked long hours. Before she passed away 5 years ago, my grandmother gave the ring to me directly. I remember the moment very clearly because she called me into her room, handed me the small jewelry box, and said she wanted me to have it when the time was right. She told me I was the only one of the grandchildren who visited her every week and helped her around the house, and that the ring should go to someone who truly cared about family. I cried and promised I'd take good care of it. Fast forward to now. Daniel knew how important the ring was to me. So instead of buying a new one, he asked my parents if it would be okay to propose with it. My parents said yes, because they knew Grandma had given it to me. Everything was fine until my sister Megan, 31F, saw the ring at a family dinner. She immediately recognized it and said something like, "Wait, isn't that Grandma's ring?" I said yes, and explained that Grandma had given it to me years ago. The mood instantly changed. Megan looked really upset and said that wasn't fair because she's the oldest granddaughter and heirlooms are supposed to go to the eldest. I told her Grandma made the decision herself and gave it to me personally. My sister said she never even knew the ring had been given away and that our grandmother must have been confused or pressured. That honestly pissed me off because my grandma was very sharp mentally up until the last year of her life, and this happened well before that. Over the next few days, Megan kept messaging me, saying the ring should go to her because she's planning to get engaged soon and it would mean more to her. Apparently, her boyfriend has been looking at rings, and she thinks this one would be perfect. I told her I wasn't giving away my engagement ring. It's literally the ring my fiancé proposed with and the last gift my grandma ever gave me. Then she escalated things. She called our parents and started complaining that I stole the ring by manipulating Grandma. My parents shut that down immediately because they knew Grandma gave it to me willingly. But Megan kept pushing and saying that if I really cared about family harmony, I would give it to her and let Daniel buy me a different ring. Now some extended relatives have gotten involved because Megan told them a very different version of events. According to her, I snatched the heirloom before anyone else had a chance. A couple of my cousins even messaged me asking why I wouldn't just compromise. One aunt suggested that since the ring originally belonged to the family, it should stay with the oldest granddaughter and that I'm being selfish for holding on to it. I tried explaining that it wasn't just some shared heirloom sitting in a box somewhere. Grandma gave it to me directly while she was alive. It was a personal gift. Megan says I'm missing the point and that traditions matter more than sentimental excuses. She claims that because she's older and might get engaged soon, she deserves the ring more than I do. Daniel is furious on my behalf and said he refuses to let anyone pressure me into giving up something so meaningful. He also pointed out that it's extremely weird to demand someone else's engagement ring. The situation reached a peak last weekend at another family gathering. Megan brought it up again in front of everyone and asked me directly if I would do the right thing and return the ring to the family so she could use it. I said no. She started crying and said I was ruining our relationship and being greedy over a piece of jewelry. I finally told her that Grandma chose who she wanted to have it and that if she didn't like that decision, her issue is with Grandma, not me. Now Megan refuses to speak to me, and a few relatives think I should just give her the ring to keep the peace, especially since I could technically get another one. But to me, it's not about the value of the ring. It's about the fact that my grandmother trusted me with something meaningful, and I don't feel right giving it away because someone else feels entitled to it. At the same time, the family drama is getting exhausting, and part of me wonders if I'm being stubborn. So AITA for refusing to give my sister the engagement ring our grandmother gave me, even though she says it should belong to her instead? AITA for refusing to let my brother stay in my house after he told everyone it was basically his place anyway. I'm 31M, and I bought my house 3 years ago after saving for almost a decade. It's not huge or fancy, but it's mine, and I'm honestly proud of it. Growing up, my family never had much stability. We moved a lot because of my parents' financial problems, so owning a home was a big personal milestone for me. My younger brother, Mark, is 27. He has always been the free spirit of the family. That's a nice way to put it. The more accurate way would be that he drifts from job to job and tends to rely on other people when things don't work out. I love him, but it's been a pattern for years. Last year, Mark lost his job and his apartment at the same time. He called me saying he had nowhere to go and asked if he could stay with me for a couple weeks. I said yes because he's my brother and I didn't want him sleeping in his car. I made it clear, though, that it was temporary. I told him 2 weeks to get back on his feet and figure something out. 2 weeks turned into a month, then 3 months. During that time, he barely helped around the house. I asked him to contribute to groceries or utilities, and he always had an excuse. He would promise he'd pay me back after his next paycheck, but then he'd quit another job or say the hours weren't enough. Meanwhile, he'd stay up late playing games in the living room, leave dishes everywhere, and invite friends over without asking. The breaking point happened during a small family barbecue I hosted in my backyard. My parents, a few cousins, and Mark's friends were there. At some point, I overheard Mark telling one of his friends, "Yeah, I live here. Me and my brother share the place." That annoyed me, but I tried to brush it off. Then later, I heard him joking to my cousin that if I ever got a girlfriend who moved in, he'd just take the bigger bedroom since he'd been there almost as long as I had. I pulled him aside and told him that wasn't funny and he shouldn't talk like the house belonged to both of us. He laughed and said, "Relax, it's basically our place at this point." I reminded him he was supposed to stay 2 weeks, and it had already been 3 months. His response was that family shouldn't keep score. After the barbecue, I started noticing more things that bothered me. He'd refer to the house as our house when talking to people on the phone. He rearranged the living room furniture without asking because he said it made more sense. One day, I came home, and he had given his friend a spare key because the friend was crashing there for a few days. That was the moment I completely lost it. I told him absolutely not, and that his friend needed to leave immediately. Mark argued that I was overreacting and said I was acting like a landlord instead of a brother. I told him if he wanted to call on my house, then I guess I was the landlord. A few days later, we had a serious conversation. I told him he needed to move out within 2 weeks. He accused me of kicking him out for no reason. I explained everything: the lack of help, the disrespect, the fact he was inviting people over like it was his place. He said I was being controlling and selfish. According to him, since I had a spare room, it shouldn't matter if he stayed longer. He also said I was embarrassing him by making such a big deal about ownership. The situation blew up in the family after he moved out. He told everyone I threw him out on the street. That's not true. He moved in with a friend who had offered him a couch weeks earlier. My parents think I should have been more patient because he's still figuring his life out. My mom even said I shouldn't have corrected him about the house in front of people because it made him feel unwelcome. But that's the thing. He was welcome at first. What bothered me was how he started acting like he had equal say in the home I worked years to afford. Now some relatives think I'm being cold and that family should always help each other without strict limits. They say I have the space and it wouldn't hurt me to let him stay until he's stable. On the other hand, a few friends say I already went above and beyond and that letting him stay longer would have just encouraged the behavior. I keep going back and forth in my head because technically I could have let him stay longer, but it also felt like my boundaries were being completely ignored in my own house. So AITA for telling my brother to move out after he started acting like my house belonged to him too. AITA for refusing to help my sister after she publicly humiliated me at her wedding. I, 28M, have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Claire, 31F. Growing up, she was the golden child in our family. She was outgoing, confident, and very good at making people like her. I was the quiet kid who preferred books and computers. Our parents didn't treat me badly, but it was obvious who got most of the attention. Claire's achievements were celebrated loudly, while mine were usually acknowledged with a quick, that's nice. Despite that, I always try to support her. When she got engaged 2 years ago, I was genuinely happy for her. She asked me to help with a lot of the technical parts of the wedding because I work in IT, and she said she trusted me more than hiring strangers. I helped build their wedding website, set up RSVP systems, created digital invitations, and even designed the seating chart software she wanted to use. It took me weeks of work in my spare time, but I did it because she's my sister. About a month before the wedding, Claire asked if I could also run the slideshow during the reception. She wanted a big screen showing photos of her and her husband throughout their relationship. I agreed, and she sent me hundreds of photos to organize. I spent hours sorting them into a nice timeline and adding music. The wedding day finally came, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. The ceremony was beautiful, and the reception started off great. When it was time for the slideshow, I set everything up and started the presentation. At first, everyone was smiling and laughing at the pictures. But about halfway through, a photo appeared that I had never seen before. It was an old picture of me from when I was about 14 during a very awkward phase. I had braces, terrible acne, and a ridiculous haircut. Normally, that would just be mildly embarrassing, but the next slide was even worse. It was a screenshot of a cringy poem I wrote as a teenager about a girl who rejected me. The room erupted with laughter. Then Claire grabbed the microphone and said something like, "And this is why my little brother should never be allowed to date." She kept joking about how I was the family's eternal virgin and how it was a miracle I even left the house. People kept laughing. Some of our cousins were filming on their phones. I just stood there feeling like my face was on fire. I had no idea those slides were even in the presentation. Later, I found out that Claire had added them herself the night before when I sent her the final file for approval. I left the reception early because I felt humiliated. My parents later told me I was being too sensitive and that Claire was just joking. Claire texted me the next day, saying I should relax because everyone thought it was hilarious. What made it worse is that a short clip of the moment ended up on social media. A cousin posted it, and it spread around our extended family group chats. Even some people from my hometown who I barely talked to saw it. I didn't speak to Claire for months after that. Recently, she reached out again, but not to apologize. She said she and her husband are starting a small online business and wanted my help setting up their website and payment system. She said it would only take me a few weekends and that family should support each other. I told her no. I said that after what she did at the wedding, I'm not interested in donating my time and skills to help her business. She got angry and said I'm holding a grudge over a harmless joke and punishing her for something that happened months ago. Now, my parents are involved again. They say Claire is stressed about starting the business and that I'm being petty by refusing to help when I clearly have the ability to make things easier for her. I told them that if she had sincerely apologized, I might have considered it. But instead, she doubled down and acted like humiliating me in front of hundreds of people was entertainment. Claire says I'm overreacting and that I'm trying to sabotage her future because I'm jealous of her life. At this point, I honestly don't know if I'm being stubborn or if my reaction is reasonable. Part of me feels guilty because helping her wouldn't actually be that difficult for me. But another part of me still feels angry every time I remember that moment. So AITA for refusing to help my sister with her business after she humiliated me at her wedding? AITA for refusing to replace my sister's wedding cake after her dog destroyed it, even though she says I ruined her big day? I, 29F, run a small baking business from home. It started as a hobby, but grew enough that I now make custom cakes and desserts for events around my town. My family knows this very well and usually asks me to bake things for birthdays or holidays. Sometimes they pay, sometimes they don't, but I usually don't mind because it's family. My older sister, 32F, got married last weekend. About 6 months ago, she asked if I could make her wedding cake. I told her I could, but because wedding cakes take a lot of time, ingredients, and stress, I would normally charge clients a few $100s depending on the design. She immediately got weird about it and said, "You're really going to charge your own sister?" I explained that I would give her a big discount, but it still costs money to make a 3-tier cake with fillings, decorations, and delivery. Eventually, she agreed to pay for ingredients and a small extra amount for my time. It was still way less than I normally charge. The cake she wanted was complicated. 3 tiers, lemon and raspberry filling, buttercream flowers, and a semi-naked style with gold leaf details. I spent days practicing the flowers because she kept sending reference photos and saying how to look exactly like that. The day before the wedding, I worked almost 12 hours straight finishing it. It honestly turned out beautiful. My sister even cried when she saw it and hugged me. She kept saying it was perfect. The wedding venue was actually her fiancé's parents' property, which is a big house with a backyard set up for the ceremony and reception. They also have 2 big dogs that usually roam around the property. When I delivered the cake that morning, I specifically asked where it should go so it would stay cool and safe. My sister told me to put it on the dessert table inside the house until later. I did exactly that. I even warned them that the dogs should probably be kept away because buttercream and cake are obviously tempting. About an hour later, I was outside helping set up some dessert trays when my cousin came running out saying something had happened to the cake. When I ran inside, I found absolute chaos. One of the dogs had jumped onto the dessert table. The entire top tier was gone and half of the second tier was destroyed. There was frosting everywhere, and the dog looked very pleased with itself. Apparently, someone had opened the back door, and the dog wandered in. Nobody was watching the table. My sister started crying immediately. At first, I felt terrible and tried to calm her down. I said we could maybe salvage the bottom tier and still cut it for photos. It wouldn't be perfect, but it was something. But then she turned to me and said, "You need to fix this." I asked what she meant. She said I needed to make a new cake right away. I reminded her that it had taken me 2 full days to make that one. The wedding ceremony was in less than 2 hours. There was literally no way to remake a wedding cake in that amount of time. She got angry and said it was my responsibility because I was the one who made the cake. I pointed out that the cake was fine when I delivered it and that someone letting the dog in wasn't exactly something I could control. At that point, our mom stepped in and told me I should just run home and bake something simple. My house is about 30 minutes away. Even if I left immediately, I couldn't bake, cool, decorate, and deliver a cake before the reception. I suggested we grab a sheet cake from a nearby grocery store for cutting and keep the remaining bottom tier for pictures. I even offered to go buy it myself. My sister said that would be embarrassing and that guests would know it wasn't the real cake. She kept saying I had ruined her wedding. Eventually, her fiancé's mom drove to a bakery and bought a couple of plain cakes. They stacked them together with flowers to make it look nicer. It obviously wasn't what she originally wanted. The rest of the wedding went fine, but my sister barely spoke to me the whole night. The next day, she texted me a long message saying she was extremely disappointed and that since I'm a professional baker, I should have anticipated something like this and had a backup plan. She said I should refund the money she paid and also pay for the replacement cakes they bought. I told her I would refund the money for the cake because I felt bad about the situation, but I wasn't going to pay for replacement cakes since the damage happened after delivery and because someone let the dog inside. Now, my mom and a few relatives say I should just pay to keep the peace because my sister is still upset and keeps telling everyone I ruined her wedding cake. I genuinely feel bad that it happened, but I also feel like it wasn't my fault that a dog destroyed it after I delivered it and warned them about the dogs. So, AITA, thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.